let me ask you this question. I would like to ask the AG to propose legislation for what we call small claims court. There are lots of poor people, to an example you just gave, that they have issues with others and sometimes with large firms, but the lawyer fee is greater than the fee you're claiming.
It is their right. The right that someone has. All of our rights exist in context.
What is the context for second medical opinion?
Because you're disrespecting the process.
No.
Jesus, this is common sense, man.
Any situation which you seem to do, you're just dealing with Afro-Guyanese issues. If one, you can't bring and pull the leaders of the African community together, you're failing. And if two, you can't put forward a vision, a blueprint, and a plan for African Guyanese, you're failing as well.
Pleasant evening to you. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show. The Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Leonard Craig. As everybody would know, in and out of Guyana, this is budget time and the budget is being analyzed all over the place. And so we have this evening someone with that kind of skills in the area of economics and finance to discuss the budget with us, share his thoughts. Our guest this evening need no introduction where this program is concerned because this is his fourth appearance. The former economic advisor to the then opposition leader in Parliament, Aubrey Norton, former treasurer of the PNC and former central executive member of the PNC. That's a lot of former, but he will explain why he acquired that former status. Our guest this evening is Elson Lowe. Welcome to Leonard Craig, and we go straight into the question with Elson. We will start not with the budget, but with the man Elson Lowe. Elson, I know some people will be uncomfortable with this question, and you also will say, Freddie, that's not the issue, but...
You're going to ask me about my hairdresser again?
Yeah, every time you come on this program, you go to the hairdresser. Did you went to the hairdresser?
I always look the same, Freddie.
You went to the hairdresser. Why a mulatto Creole guy like you overlook a middle-class mulatto Creole party like the AFC and chewing your lot with the PNC?
Oh yeah, that's an interesting one. In fact, I think when I first moved back to Guyana, a lot of people used to say, use the AFC just off of looking at me, which is I found to be an interesting comment. Listen, as some would know, my great uncle is Dr. Charles Reid, who is very prominent in the PNCR, Prime Minister, and so on. But
founding member of the PNC.
Yeah, but generally, at the end of the day, I'm a policy-driven politician. So I would go to a party where I think that I can have an impact on the policies, approaches of that party to be able to influence the nation, bring people out of poverty, get the economy growing the way that it should be, innovation and whatnot. And so, the PNC was a party where I thought that I can have that impact. And I think most people would say that given the influence I've had over some national discussions, that on the balance of it, that was the correct decision, right? So that's really why. And my decisions, my actions, you'll see if you think about them, are very much policy-oriented actions. I'm a man who believes in the right policies, the right approaches, and the PNC is receptive, I think, more than any other party.
You ever toyed with the idea, I like the AFC and going to go in with the AFC?
I don't know that the AFC was as focused on economic policy at the time, or there was really, I think, an opportunity to engage with policy in the PNC. When I really became more active, you would have noted that even in Parliament, right, it was directed at the PNC. It was like the primary economic force, and there wasn't really a primary economic force on the PNC side. So there was a need really to fill, and I think I was able to, at least I would hope, I was able to provide some assistance over the years. I will have contributed annually something like seven budget speeches I would have contributed towards, including leading the opposition speech every single year, for 5 years or so that I was there. You know, so this is the first year that I'm not actively contributing to any of the speeches, which is a different experience, but you know, that's how it goes. I hope that the policies and the ideas I put forward have inspired people and provoked their thoughts and so on.
Elson, economist Leonard Craig,
Now,
trained economist.
Before we go to that, I want to take you back a little to the politics. So far, how do you see opposition unity and that kind of thing? Because some have called for it. Some are saying that WIN, for example, is not portraying that character as though they intend to be to pull together a unified opposition. What is your views concerning the opposition presenting a unified front,
Yeah.
and what is needed?
I think really there's two key points, and then we can continue discussion from there. But the first point is that, you know, WIN is still a new party. That is to say, we don't know a whole lot about WIN as a party. The PNC doesn't know a whole lot about them Guyana generally. So we're still trying to figure out their thoughts. This national budget would be interesting to get a sense of their philosophy and their approach. So I think a little bit of friction is natural at this stage. I think also though, we're still trying to figure out, you know, what are WIN's values necessarily and how do they align with the PNC's values. So a little bit of searching is going on in that respect. But secondly, I would say that this is, I think, going to be a factor that will define a lot of Guyanese politics going forward. There are basically two futures we're looking at. We're looking at a non-extradited Azzuddin Mohammed future and an extradited Azzuddin Mohammed future. And there's two very different scenarios with very different opposition dynamics that have to be navigated in their own way. We'll have to see how everything goes, how things proceed. But I'm just saying, from a general political analysis perspective, those are two different situations that I think, until we have a little bit more clarity, might, you know, provide some challenges in terms of us engaging, or the PNC engaging, and so on, and any party engaging with WIN generally. I don't want to speak on behalf of the PNC.
Do you think the PNC did the right thing with by leaving Parliament when it's time for the roll for the vote?
Well, what I would say is, I think maybe what could have been done better is a little bit more clarity of message. Because it seems to be there's confusion in the public's mind as to whether they were anti his election or whether they were just abstaining or what was going on there. And so I would say, to me, once the public is kind of confused as to what your stance is, obviously
they weren't effective.
Room for improvement.
Right, but generally speaking, the action they took, would you have advised that they take that action if you were part of the ensemble?
Well, listen, I would say that on the one hand, I think it is generally important to respect the will of the people. You would have seen me come on this show and articulate what I think the will of the people has been, right? But at the same time, I think, and you'll hear me say that two things can be true. That, you know, we can't just pretend that there aren't concerns regarding this particular legal to opposition. So I don't think they necessarily should, and even if it was a walkout. But what I'm saying is, I think they should have just kept quiet on the issue and let it run, because obviously that's the will of the people at this point in time, and address, I think, the key issues of the day.
So you were concerned.
But at the same time, did it really walk out? Is that really what happened? It's kind of unclear, because they're saying there wasn't an election because there was there's no other candidates.
Right.
So what I'm saying is it's unclear. It's to be generally, whatever stance you take, it should be clear. That's all I'm saying.
So you would have voted positive in the affirmative?
I would probably have abstained. I mean, listen, I think everyone's entitled to due course of justice. I think we have to assume innocence until proven guilty and whatnot. But at the same time, I can't be using and going aggressively about corruption and talking about the ills of it. And then someone who is serious allegations around corruption, everything's cool, happy, all of a sudden happy days. No, that would be, I think that would be inappropriate. And so I think, as I said, innocent until proven guilty. But at the same time, there's some serious allegations regarding that that have to be resolved.
Elson, your last appearance on this program found its way in the media. I remember reading something to the contrary. You made some very, very absorbing revelations. Leonard keeps telling me all the time, yesterday, that when PNC people say something that the flock doesn't like, there's an abuse on social media. You made some startling revelations, and they found their way in a huge discussion. Did you receive any A, vulgar abuse, B, intellectual agreement, and C, a sympathetic understanding of what you said from the flock and from the PNC leadership?
Well, listen, generally, I know that some people want to attack me in the comments and so on. I don't read the comments. I don't read them ever. What I do is I do a statistical analysis of where polls will be, what opinions will be, and so on, and I run with that. So if you're attacking me in the comments and you expect that I will react to it, I mean, maybe once a blue moon I might run across a comment, you know? So that's one thing. The second is that I did receive a lot of, and I have been receiving, especially from young people, a lot of young people that have called me and said they admire my integrity, that they support what I have to say, that they think that there's great need for reform, that they're frustrated with the state of guidance politics generally. So there's been a lot of support, especially from young people in that regard. Obviously, a lot of people who are not frustrated, not pleased. But you know, I mean, listen, when you're in a position that you are, where you have 78,000 votes, you move from, what was it, 216,000 to 78,000, even if you're in the AFC, if you're able to, you know, you gotta take stock, you gotta make a frank assessment, you gotta appropriately address the situation. You know, essentially what happened is the party underwent a boycott at the election, where a huge number of people just didn't vote and a large number of people left. So, you know, there's no net gain to remaining quiet. It wouldn't serve any purpose. It's not useful. This is the best. Speaking out is the best of the worst of all of the bad options. So staying quiet wouldn't help either. Now, the good thing about speaking out, which is why I thought also that it was my duty to speak out, is that, you know, there's 60,000 or so, maybe as many as 80,000 people who just didn't show up to vote. I think on some level, as a political figure, I owe them an explanation, I owe them my ear, right? I should recognize what they're telling me. I think from a perspective of being humble, I think you as a political figure need to listen to people from that perspective, right? So when people engage me, I listen to them. But also, you know, as we go forward in Guyanese politics, there are not that many figures who I think that 60,000 people or 80,000 people would really listen to as keenly, because they clearly are not buying whatever it is that is being sold by the established or the legacy figures. So by acknowledging their concerns, I think I've been able to give them some degree of representation, and going forward, I think that they perhaps should listen closely to my assessment of things, given that in a very difficult situation, I don't want to, you know, it seems to be that I try to be as frank as I could, you know? So I think that in a way, I owed speaking out. I owed Guyana speaking out, you know, so that at least, you know, those people get some level of representation going forward. Because obviously at the time, there was a denial that the people didn't, you know, people rigged the whole thing. Not that these people just weren't comfortable with us, or weren't happy with our politics, you know. So it's almost like there was an ignoring of a very large portion of the population, which, you know, I owed it to them to represent them if I'm going to be
So when you were on the program the last time, you did not yet resign.
Well, what I said is, I'll speak out, I'll listen to, stay with the party, stay on the executive, listen to the feedback.
But then you resigned, why?
Well, you know,
Were there aggressive attacks from within the party?
No, it's that I sat down, as I said I did, I listened, and I didn't think that they were going to take the appropriate steps. So, you know, I did what I said I would do, and I moved on in that regard.
Okay, so the leader didn't call you and say, Elson, why are you speaking out like that and you're still a member of the executive? No, nobody didn't call you to say that.
Well, listen, there are various people who would have engaged me, you know.
Did the leader engage you?
He attempted to engage me, but you know, it is a pretty charged environment generally in the country at the time. But I listened to engagements from leaders. But I would say that at the end of the day, having already said that it's not that people boycotted the party, it's that people rigged the whole thing. You know, the level of engagement would be, there'd be a narrow field within which we could agree.
All right. So, would you describe yourself as a politician?
One of the hats that I wear is political activity.
And am I correct in saying you have not left politics in general?
No, I don't think I've left. I haven't left the PNC. I've left politics. And
is there a world where you could be engaged actively in another party?
Well, one of the things I try to stress, and this is something I think.
Let me give you a PPP card.
Well, one of the things that I think is important to do to kind of recognize, right, is on the one hand I may have moral objections to aspects of PPP governance, right? But also, they're not going to listen to the policies I'm putting forward. They're not going to listen to the mathematics. So they don't add any value. There's no net gain to, you know.
Oh, so you're saying you do not add any value to them, or
no,
they don't
if
add
you're
any
not going to
value
listen to what I have to say, then it's pointless. There is no reason to join the PPP. They don't add anything. They don't add any value. They don't improve my life.
But Elson,
I started by saying I joined the PNC because I felt I could have an impact on the policies and the approach, right? So if you're just not going to listen to anything that people like myself have to say, what, you have anything to offer? You're just not going to listen, so that's cool, you know.
Elson, but we're in new territory. The PPP 50%, people tend to like finale. If this guy reached out to you and say, look, 70% of this population are young people, you have a talent, you're trained in finance, economics, what, and I think that's what most presidents and prime ministers say, if you loan your skills to the government, what would you, where and how would you like to contribute? If the president says that to you, what could you anticipate what your...
Well, I'll tell you two things that I find interesting. The first is, my analysis is not private or only provided to the PNC. I'm in the papers all the time. I was in the papers this week speaking about the national budget. I'm in the papers the previous week speaking about the national budget. The analysis is open and available to use. So that's number one. And number two is, one of the things that I find really entertaining. So this budget is called Putting People First, right? Which of course was also the APM slogan. Well, putting people first, you know where that came from? There was a discussion. That's because people-centered development strategy is hard to chant. So people first could be chanted. So putting people first. So it's kind of like you're using the words that I came up with, but the content, the policies, the approach, the policy philosophy, I use it. So in a way that it is useless to me. So the analysis is there. It's free to use.
But you have answered the question. A president and a prime minister is at the apex of a country.
Well, what I'm saying is what I have provided is clear. There's nothing more to just use it. I mean, and there's a long catalog of things that I've set on a wide variety of issues. Did you listen? So, you know. Anyway, that's their decision. They have a policy philosophy, so why they didn't listen, that's okay. I am open to the idea that they don't agree or think what I'm saying is incorrect. Obviously, they like my slogan, putting people first.
You said you invented that slogan?
Yeah, that came from a discussion with me and other people within the PNC. That's why it became
and that was made
party
public,
slogan.
putting people first?
That was the party slogan for the PNC. There's t-shirts, posters with that slogan. So it was pretty entertaining to see it. Like I said, the people first part was because people-centered development strategy is not chantable. So people first is chantable, so we adjust it, putting people first. Anyhow, I digress.
I'm gonna take a back seat now because My thing is philosophy, political theory, international relations. This is a trained economist. You're in that area. So budget.
You heard the budget speech, and I don't know to what level you've seen the actual estimates and so on. But give a synopsis of how you visualize, how you view the budget, how you interpret.
Yeah, absolutely. I will. I'll say a couple things. One thing is, I don't have only negative things to say. As you would have heard me say previous, when you asked me positive things about budget, I said I like the fact that they're spending significant sums, right? Now, in this particular instance, I like the fact that they've dialed back a little bit the rate at which they've expanded the budget. I made some remarks recently about Guyana needing to brace itself for a period of potentially lower oil prices, right? So I like the fact that, which I think some people across academics and intellectuals in Guyana were worried that there would be another sharp increase in the budget coming ahead of potentially a period of lower oil prices, which might have put the country in a precarious position financially. So I like the fact that the government has dialed that back a bit. I think that is useful. I think that, so as I would have called for in the past, more money going to the Small Business Bureau. There is a development bank which is going to be putting I think 100 million US, is going to be made available to small businesses and so on. I think that's good. I don't agree with the 0% interest rates.
With the
0% interest rate
on the
loans. Yeah, because I think that opens it up to potential for abuse or creates a temptation for abuse. I would
in
say,
what way?
well, usually the problem with the 0% interest rate is you can borrow the money, put it in a safe investment, and just reap the net return because the government is not charging you interest. So
Yeah, but what is wrong with that? What is wrong with that for citizens who otherwise would not have had access to capital?
No, but why can't they have access to capital at 2.5% the rate of inflation according to the government? It's not that much different, but it doesn't have the same incentives. So I'm saying it's a little bit of a bridge too far unnecessarily. That's what I'm trying to say. However, I'm not saying that putting money towards small businesses is bad, because I said that it's important. So what I'm saying is, I can acknowledge, as I have in the past, spending more in these areas is good. The way you spend, I have some concerns about, right? Now, those are some of the I think, in terms of the healthcare sector, I think the cancer, spending on cancer, on oncology level, that's good. Finishing hospitals is good. But, what I thought was interesting is some people seem surprised by the budget somehow. And it baffled me as to why you would be surprised, because very similar to the previous budget, totally similar approach, small increases, heavy spend on infrastructure, questions around the spend on human capital, education falling as a share of the overall budget. This is the same sugar and spices we've been having all along. So I think what we as some Guyanese maybe need to digest is that there is a policy philosophy of the PhD, which is like a center-left, center-right policy philosophy, which, of course, I don't think is quite appropriate given the circumstances. But secondly, there are other constraints which have led them to this policy philosophy, or the inability to shift that.
So the budget should go more towards what, right or left?
Well, I think that given that you've got a huge amount of oil revenue over the life of the oil sector, I've made many efforts to push the PNC and the policies of the opposition to the left, but with certain structures in place, rather than just spending money wildly. So as an example, this 100,000 cash grant. The person who came up with the first cash grant was El Salvador, because we had a bonus amount of money due to the war in Ukraine. The same 60 billion that they spent on the first one, I said this money is available, right? I can't wait for years for that. But when it comes to cash grants going forward, which are not necessarily windfall cash grants, because there's been no second windfall, you need to have some structure. So as an example, what we was advocating for in the APA News Manifesto was that you have a cash grant that is tied to efficiency and reducing corruption. So you work on that, you have metrics as to how you want to approach this, you identify areas where you want to bring down your spend, and you return that to citizens. That's a structured one. That is still a cash grant, so it's still left wing, it's a cash grant, but it's structured. What you have right now is just a grant. So that is, of course, an area of frustration to you, because what you've got in hand, unfortunately, the budgets, and I can help you guys understand this, is a very significant inefficiency / corruption gap, which I think if senior members of the PVP lay at night awake concern, is that you've seen the budget 5x in a short space of time, but you've only seen tax revenue 2x, 2.5x over the same period of time, which means that essentially you're spending a lot, but you're not generating any tax revenue. Now, that's kind of hard to do. If you spend in 1.2 trillion and you're barely increasing your tax revenue relative to your spending, it's like, where's the money going? So that partially is misallocation of funds in terms of the quality of analysis of projects. The Wales is gas, the energy plant is one I talk about a lot. But it's also, you have a high degree of corruption in the system. People can't put that money in the bank, so they got put in a mattress. So it isolates them from the economy. So it doesn't generate any tax revenue.
So, two questions. Isn't that what people do with respect to revenue? When you have a stream of income like oil, it wouldn't last forever, but it can finance seriously and seriously larger expenditure. Isn't that what people do? Relieve some of the tax burdens and so on. You know you're collecting less, and you spread it out over a period, and then you work around that. Isn't that what governments do in a poverty? I won't want to say poverty-stricken Guyana, but Guyana
that still has a
lot,
to go.
exactly, and a lot of development to do. But isn't that what a structured thing to do? Why are you against it?
Let us assume best of intentions for the people. Let's just assume that, right? Now, when you're analyzing the spend, and the number that comes up a lot is that IMF number indicating that 40% of government investment basically wasted or so. Right? That's a number that's
the IMF said that.
Yeah, that's a number that's come over the years. But you can itemize it and look at different projects.
Said that?
Yeah. Freddie, this is gonna be probably the third time for me sure. Anyway, I digress.
Craig, do you agree with that?
No, but let him continue.
Anyway,
our policy here is to let people
the point,
have their.
The point
Sure,
is
obviously,
that it is something that they brought up, and then for years until we started speaking about it in the opposition, every single year in the IMF recommendations, the Article 13 recommendations, they would say, based off of the previous assessment, you need to improve your procurement, you need to improve your planning, your feasibility studies, and so on. And you can of course itemize individual projects where they haven't lasted as long as they could have, and so on. Right? That number is, when I heard that for Guyana to be losing 42 cents off every dollar when we invest, my first instinct was to shut up shop and give you back the money because it's a waste of time. It's such a serious issue.
So you're saying corruption is responsible for that?
Corruption is one, incompetence is the other, right? Or lack of planning. Let me be nice. Lack of planning. Now, what I'm getting at is, though, as your budget gets bigger, you spend more. If you don't address the core issues, there's a huge amount of money to be losing. And the consequence of that is now that you're not generating the returns you would have expected to generate with the level of spending. So, essentially, if there were good returns, you would see something between $200 and $400 billion more of tax revenue per annum, and it would look much more like it used to look in previous years gone by when you increase spending. However, lacking that, you've ended up with a big hole in your budget. So as a consequence, the PVP and the government officials have had to kind of slow down the rate at which they increase pensions, increase public servant salaries, increase welfare benefits, because they don't have the tax revenue commensurate with the level of spending. And that is because it matches that. So I can literally sit you down and point out to you, based off of how much you spend, if you lose your 42 cents on the dollar, this will result in X amount. 42 cents on the dollar.
You accept that IMF?
No. I don't think any sane person.
Conceptually,
I don't think
the highest in the world. That's why it's terrible.
No, I don't think any sane
maybe it's
person
the
could
second or
accept
third
that.
highest.
Could live in Guyana, see that, and accept.
Well,
that
here's an
figure.
example. When you build a road, as economists, when we look at it, it's supposed to last you 20 years before major
You
returns,
got me
right?
draw that.
But if you
got
no.
that more than the same person. You got me draw that.
A road is supposed to last you 20 years before any major works are done, right? The Heroes Highway, they already start this part, that part. You look at the Stoner to Crane Highway, this part, that part. What I'm getting at is, every time you gotta repair that road, that comes towards the last ledger. So the gain, when you start spending huge amounts, or even a small improvement in efficiency, is billions of dollars. But if you don't reform, the loss is billions of dollars. So when you say that the approach should be this approach, I say the first thing to do is reform, because with reform you can squeeze way more out of the same pie. And then we get to the conversation around the policy mix.
You're contradicting yourself, right? Because you say the losses are due to corruption and things on the mattress, and then now you're saying...
I said also incomplete.
Yeah, both. Two things can be
said.
I mean, I know that sometimes people just make mistakes, they measure right. It's unfortunate, and as a government you gotta try and stop that, but that happens. I mean, I'm sure not all the contractors whose work has crumbled in a short period of time intended for it to crumble, but it's still crumbled, and we still gotta repair roads and do over roads and broaden roads and fix this and fix that. Every time you do that, it's a cost.
The IMF came up with that analysis.
That can't fart to something percent.
Well, one of the other factors.
We don't rush and embrace World Bank and IMF things too quickly.
Oh, but even so, I can show you the smart on specific projects. One of the other things that has been a factor is that you haven't seen returns from monies invested in guys. Now, of course, there's value to the workers having a job, put into productive use. When you pump your money into it, and by everyone's admission, including the president, not going to plan, right? Or changes.
All right.
So that is a flat loss over and over and over and over. So it will impact your numbers. And how long were we doing that? A long time.
Okay, hold it.
Yeah. And it's very unfortunate for the workers.
Do you appreciate all the spin-off that comes off of Gaisuko, that monies that go in contract towards local contractors, towards families? Have you considered that? Why do you consider it a loss?
No, what I'm saying is relative to expectation. So it's 42 cents on the dollar relative to what you would normally have bought. So that dollar would have also included those spin-offs. So I'm saying is you still get a spin-off, but the 42 cents is still lost. So it's relative to...
No, but so, isn't that...
I mean, it'd be nice if you think about
a conscious... Because that is the way, for example, China developed.
No,
when China was developing...
But why does Gaisuko have to not... There's a million ways for Gaisuko to be profitable because you have skilled workforce. There's a country with a shortage of skilled workforce. There's huge areas where you could be profitable, housing, construction, this, that. It doesn't have to be not profitable. So it's just a loss. There's no reason. You could pay Gaisuko workers better wages when they were engaged in other sectors of the economy. You gradually migrate them into other sectors. You know, so it is what it is. You know.
All right. I don't want to be too argumentative with you.
No,
but the other thing that I just want to plug this in passing, because you mentioned about the shrinkage of tax collection and all of that, and I am saying, but for example, let's just take one tax, and that is the tax on gasoline or on fuel, right? Not just necessarily gasoline. Just imagine just putting 4% or 5% tax on that. Do you understand the level of revenue that the government is going to take in? And the government knows that, and a 5% tax would just raise gas price, you know, a few dollars more at the pump and so on. It might be small to the individual who goes to buy 2 and 3 gallons of gas, but it's large to the revenue intake, and that is a deliberate plan and not a loss necessarily. But it's putting money back.
One of the reasons that governments are often worried about the higher prices, they would want to impose a tax in that particular area, is that the price of oil can have outsized impact on the other sectors of the economy.
Right.
So as an example of...
So, right, you are saying that, but you're still counting it as a loss.
No, I'm not. That's not...
Do you know the sum deposit? The sum deposit in the banks have increased, and the monies borrowed for investment in the country has also increased. In that, it is income that we use to develop the other sectors.
Yeah, but if you
So
had
why are you
$1
counting
more,
it as a loss?
it would be a greater income. The question is, relative to how you should perform, relative to expectations, should it be? I mean, for you
Relative
to
to
5x
whose
your budget,
expectation?
for
Yeah.
you to 5x your budget, and only 2x your tax revenue or 2.5x your tax revenue. It's a huge. I mean, you move from 380 billion budget to 1,380 billion budget, and you move the tax revenue up that much. I mean, well, where did $1 trillion go?
Wait,
That's a lot of money.
Hold on.
It's kind of hard not to generate tax revenue.
Why would you want to do that in the short term? I'm not
saying raise taxes.
I don't foresee that
I'm not
happening.
saying raise taxes. I'm saying with the same tax structure, the expectation, more corporate taxes, more duty, more VAT. Those things would be the natural effect.
The
as it goes
expectation
through the
by
economy.
whom? That's the question.
No,
I'm
any
asking.
economist could calculate it for you. Because you look at the money multiplier, you look at the money that was spent, you look at the taxation rate, and you pull it out. It's not a lot of the time when I put out analysis, it's not, or you would tell from my demeanor. Check my numbers, check my analysis, go over, no problem. Because I'm just quoting the textbook. Money multiplier effect is the thing in the textbook.
Let me ask you this question. To finance the budget, right? The tax as a proportion of the budget,
Yeah.
right? What would you do to increase it?
Oh, well, for me, the major thing is, and this is where, after having had 5 years of spending, right? Let's say that you spend heavily in the first couple of years from our revenue, and you're saying we're spending in these investments to grow the economy and grow the tax base, right? A couple of years have passed, you'd expect to see a very sharp increase, etc., in the tax revenue, commensurate with the increases in spending. Years have passed. Now, if you're not seeing that, then it means that you didn't spend money well, or you didn't spend it as well as you would. And when you sit down and look at the numbers, yeah, you still were making that part. Even if you cut it down to 30% loss, 30 cents on the dollar, you got the business. So what I'm getting at is, reform will yield both more benefits and more tax revenue.
Yeah. But you're going around in a circle. You're not saying specifically what are 1, 2, or 3 reforms that you believe could make the difference.
Oh, no, absolutely.
And in your answer, can you consider that the government is deliberately doing deliberately doing
Where are you going?
a high infrastructure investment rate, and infrastructure investment do not have returns immediately, so you expect investment in infrastructure to flatline for a period and then go down, and during that time when you start getting the returns, your tax will go up as a proportion both of your spending and of your...
I say two things. The first is, nothing wrong with infrastructure in general, but if, as I've remarked, you gotta go back and fix back the road, then there's a net loss.
If you expend heavily on infrastructure, how are you getting the return in
spending
taxes?
with a loss. It's not like you just spend it on it. The road is fixed, you don't gotta worry about the road. You gotta keep coming back to this road over and over. I mean, there are roads in Ghana. They've been down 5 times in the last 5 years. How many times you think the Grove Road? You know how many times they've done the Grove Road? The road next to Queen's College is always on the Thomas Land Road. Every time I blink for years on them, they do it over the same road. Those are classic examples of where your spending is not efficient, right? So you
that Thomas Road, I'm going to take objection to that. I'm in the national park every day, and I don't know over the years they keep. I know they've repaired it, but not in the exaggerated way you are.
All right.
But as we go on with the budget, just briefly before Fred come back again, from A plus to D minus, the grades that you're taking, B minus, B plus, from A plus to D minus, what's your grade for the budget?
I said the man ain't giving me an F in the option.
But you can put in the F. I don't see it as a...
no, listen, what I would stress is this. The PDP has been true to their policy, philosophy, and their approach. So from that perspective, all right, I would give this budget to C, because I don't agree with the policy, philosophy, and approach.
C plus or C minus?
But it's consistent.
A C.
And in particular, what I think is good is that they did not jump up the budget by 40 to 46% as they have in previous years, but pull back a bit, because that would have been very concerning. You know, so that to me is, so just like in years I've said, I think it's good that they're spending more. When they shouldn't spend more, they put back on it.
So you're saying you can see a clear method in the PPP. They're true to the method, but you just don't agree to it. But you can see a clear method.
Yeah, well,
Can
I
you?
mean, if a man is riding a bicycle and he keeps falling down, clear method. But he keeps falling down. You know, I mean, at this rate, when you look at it, I mean,
All right,
when our salaries and so on gonna be at the level people be comfortable. If your tax revenue is growing at a slow rate, right, relative to your spending, it's a good while, which is why you keep your person put back when public companies get a big salary. You keep saying, oh, another 5 years, oh, and another 3 years. No, it's because the rate at which your tax revenue is growing is slow. So that is what I think, if I had to guess, I mean, I don't know exactly right. If I had to guess, we'll realize now at night thinking about this, why is tax revenue growing as fast as like, this slowing down the rate? That's probably reason, you know? Now, to reform, which I'm saying about the rate, you have to bring in expertise, you have to crack down on corruption, you have to do a lot more feasibility studies, you have to move on. But to do that, it might upset the political apple cart, I suppose, was one of the questions people are asking. Because again, what you have is what you call expensive politics. To keep the PPP system stable, it requires a high degree of corruption and mix and this and that. So as a consequence, it's a high cost. Now,
That's a huge generalized statement.
Yeah.
well,
to
I mean,
keep the PPP system, you have to have a high level of corruption.
yeah, I think you do. And I'll tell you this.
Come on.
While I
that's
think,
a hugely
I'll tell you
exaggerated
this. While I think
statement.
Catherine, I don't think he's someone who's not genuine at all, as many have said. But as he talked about reform, if he becomes president, is it going to be different? Probably the same promise, you know, unless he embraces reform. So, but you know, time will tell. You know, in this party, we'll see what happens.
You're still part of the PNC, so I can refer to Terence Campbell as the parliamentary leader of your party. You were once the economic advisor to the PNC. Now there's a parliamentary leader that has to confront budget speeches. What's the relation with you and Campbell? A, and B, do you plan to meet before the reading of the estimates take place?
Well, I'll say two things. The first is I try to maintain a good relationship with folks as best I can. You know, and so we have a good relationship, I think. If he asks me for advice, I'll be happy to provide it. If as an example, he wants to expound on existing policies, I'll be happy to provide that advice. Happy to develop those policies along with other people. So, you know, I'm open to providing advice. But if he doesn't ask me, that's okay too. You'll still see my advice in the public. I'm here speaking, obviously giving advice. I'm in the papers giving advice. And, you know, you pick this up frequently from me. I owe Guyana an effort to try and see what should be done or how it should be done. If it's influential, that's great. If not, it's unfortunate, but it's the best I can do.
But between now and the reading of the estimates, since the budget has been delivered, I think next week we'll have the reading of that takes a week. From the time of the delivery announcement of the budget and now, he hasn't got on to you and say, well look, we got about 5 or 4 speakers talking on this budget, you gotta come on board.
Well, it's his decision and the decision of the party, but as I've said, I'm happy to assist.
When last you spoke to him?
I was spoken to him for some time. Like I said, yeah, I was spoken to him for some time.
Elections for the PNC is June, July. Do you anticipate running back for the treasurer or any other thing?
I have to assess where the party is going, what the thinking is. As I've made comments before, I think significant philosophical and structural reforms are necessary. So, you know, I have to see if anyone is interested in that approach. And, if they are, I can look at supporting them. If not, the party decides that it's not interested in reform. That's unfortunate. Well, my opinion is, I've already voiced, is that without reform,
Yeah, but having Campbell there is not the beginning of reform.
I would say that I think that within I would say what his remit is, what I see as his task, which is to make sure the PNC stabilizes and whatnot. I think he's doing a good job of that. But I think the task of reform is a much broader task, and it will require a lot of people in the PNC to buy into change. I don't know that they're there yet, but maybe there'll be more information as we get closer to that.
But Elsa, let's be brutally realistic, and the adverb brutally has to be emphasized. If this guy is a creature of Norton, is he going to say, look, Elsa Lowe talk about a philosophical reformation? Does he have space, even if he accept that? Does Terence Campbell have space to maneuver along a pathway of philosophical reformation? You didn't just say transformation, you use the word philosophical, which grammatically and epistemologically means a real foundation change.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, at the end of the day, what worried me about the election is not so much wins emergence, is the 60,000 people who stayed away. Basically, unless there's a philosophical change within the PNC, or
109,000 people voted for Win, and all the PNC consider Linden they lost, and that don't worry
I'll tell you why. Because unless there's a philosophical change in the PNC, or the AFC somehow was able to revive and gain people's trust fully, or a new party emerges, essentially, those 60,000 people, if they keep staying home,
forward Guyana.
yeah, that's not a possibility. But if those 60,000 people keep staying home, you know, you keep losing, you keep losing, right? So, win is a factor, but ultimately, a deeper reform, you know, and when you talk to young people, there's a lot of young people who reached out to me. You know, we grew up in Guyana, it's not like our eyes were shut all the time. We recognize the shortcomings of the country and we want to see reform. So, you gotta push reform. Now, if you don't, then I guess those young people won't vote for you. When you look at the numbers for the PNC, you got 23,000 members in the party, you only get 77,000 votes. It means the members, the wife, and the best friend vote for you, and not a soul else. Almost no young people in the whole country. So you gotta take that on board and have a deeper reform. Otherwise, there gotta be some other solution, because if those people are gonna stay in home, it's different than people voting and going in the other direction. People who vote and going in the other direction, you have to convince. But people who stay home, you gotta really make a big change to convince them that you're gonna change, right? So that to me is the demand that is very serious. So I hope, and you know, I obviously as a person who advocates reform, who's involved in the constitutional reform process, Campbell is also involved in the constitutional reform process, right? Talking about it. Hope springs eternal. And so we'll have to see.
Constitution reform process within the PNC.
No.
Generally.
Philosophically, you have to have a reform, which would lead naturally to constitutional reform.
In the PNC.
Both within, but also nationally.
Okay.
Yeah, because once you reform your philosophy, you would devolve powers from the president, strengthen the legislative arms.
As the economic advisor to the parliamentary opposition leader, Mr. Norton, did you ever have any tete-a-tete with David Granger, Basil Williams, Joe Harmon?
Because, I was also Harmon's advisor. So.
No, but I'm talking about when you became
I think it is important to be humble enough to ask what people who have been in senior positions, what their thoughts are, what their experience has been. So I would have asked that of the former president as well as other senior people, because you know I'm learning and I don't know everything. So and you know those are I think useful.
Earlier you made a comment when we spoke about win that there are two pathways with respect to win
expedition pathway, non-expedition pathway.
There are two realities.
Yeah.
The reality where an expedition is successful. How do you see win faring in the political landscape leading into 2030, 2031?
Well, it depends heavily on, I think it depends heavily on the family's willingness or interest in politics going forward. Win is a party which I don't think they would deny is biased towards the use of resources. It spends a lot of money. PNC has spent money over the years, but I don't think it has spent heavy proportionately. So Win would require a significant spend.
Yeah.
So if coffers are shut, they won't spend any more money. heard senior women, I think women general secretary said, where is the only party got the money to vote? There were comments, and obviously I think a lot of people, the PNC were rightfully a bit offended by that. But generally, WIN is a finance-heavy party. So therefore, if the finance cuts off, I think they'll shrink to become a much smaller force. Not disappear, but shrink significantly. You know, people would have reported to me, I don't know who paid them, you know, what happened, but people would have reported to me that they were paid $40,000 to put on a beauty shirt and these kinds of things. If you can't keep paying people $40,000 to put on a beauty shirt.
We've all heard that.
Right, so you have a problem, right? So I think that is one of the key
There was a
dynamics.
video with a man with a rucksack, and as people come to the leadership, he's giving
well,
out.
so I think that's a pretty significant factor. So we'll have to see, you know. But if so, alright, then that exposes two parts. Part number one, they keep spending. We'll have to see how we navigate it going forward. Whether the guidance public buys in to the philosophy or that they articulate. I don't know what it will be when they articulate it, right? Maybe at the budget we'll see some articulation. But prospect number two is that I think the night couple first they don't spend, or first they do spend. Anyway, first is they don't spend, reduction. Second is they do spend, then we have to see how things plan.
Edson, if this year you're uncomfortable with this, of course our guests, we don't want to make our guests uncomfortable. But I mean, the viewers know who you are, how close you were to, I mean, you were the economic advisor to the leader of the opposition. Sure. You were the treasurer of the PNC. Do you see Abui Norton in July this year? Is July this year the congressional election?
Yeah, it could be June, July.
Could you see him contesting the election?
Well, listen, it's possible. What I would say is, you know, at the end of the day, Aubrey Norton's the best boss I ever had. I really appreciated working on him. I just was picked up. I'm a frank person. I don't know that I care enough not to be frank. It's pointless. And so, you know, I mean, given the performance, unfortunate, I don't, you know.
He is the best boss in terms of your personal relationship.
I think in terms of someone who listens to young people, engages with them, lets them develop ideas, works, mentors, I think he's terrific.
But that's contrary
contrary to what we see in public.
And what his own people said. The guy from Linden.
Two things can be true.
What's his name?
You can be great at
Amanda Walton watched it.
You can be great at nurturing young, capable talent and not be good at other things. The thing is, the reason that me and obviously other people have gotten not the best relationship or they're frustrated with me is I'm a frank person. What you're good at, I'll say you're good at. What you're not good at, I'll be like, hey man, this isn't makes sense.
Okay, so don't
So,
be.
I don't.
He's bifurcating. He's bifurcating.
Well, I don't
He's
care
bifurcating
enough
the personality
to
of Norton. He said when Norton with
perpetuate-
young people.
When he is good, he is good, and when he is not good, he is rotten.
Well,
Alright.
I don't want
do such a thing.
Or well,
So, you know, that's what I'm saying.
When he's not good,
he is not good.
He is
That's all.
irredeemable.
Well, guys. But all I'm saying, therefore, is that, you know, people, I think, tend to form caricatures of people in their minds. And I think which is why I keep trying to introduce the concept, two things can be true. You have to have a bit more sophisticated analysis than that. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of good policies were produced. I like them. We had a big manifesto that people thought was well received. That is a result of good mentorship from Aubrey Norton. However, is that everything that is required to win the election? No. So, I mean, and
how can the manifesto be well received? Then you.
well, there's other things.
It's alright. It's alright. I don't want to seem too argumentative. It's alright. It's alright.
You know, you can vote on a wide range of things. Economics
But Elson, that electoral results could only have one grammatical description, not disaster, not terrible, but the severe word of tsunamic devastation. You can't climb at 31 and then you drop to 12. The statements of Port Show, Pleasance, Buxton, Linden, Wismar I mean, traditional votes of the PNC by the thousands. You scrape up this, you scrape up that. Something had to be defective in the leadership for a party to have suffered so ignominiously.
Well, Freddie, I'm not saying, I'm saying there are areas where it's good and areas where, and as I would have expressed to you, I was pretty straightforward to people in our camp. These are my concerns. This doesn't make sense. This isn't correct. Even when it comes to, as when I explained, these are some of the risks, these are the issues. You know, like I said, I don't care enough to just not say anything. It doesn't help. So, you know, that's what it is. What it is.
You said in this program, the previous time, that you spoke to David Hines about his emanations, about certain angles. One of Leonard Craig's perennial lamentation on this program since November when he joined is that the PNC got these leaders of, instead of engaging people, abusing them out, cussing them out. And he cites Terence Campbell. Don't you think you should use your influence to tell them, look, join a more civilized debate. It helps you?
Yeah.
Well, given that I have spoken to Dr. Hines, I think, you know, that's my stance, is that I believe that that's the way to engage. And I think more or less many politicians have come to understand. I try to avoid as much as possible the personal, your head big, your foot long, your shoe ugly, I mean, type of politics. You know, I'm a policy-oriented politician. You know? So I, of course, will always continue to advocate for engagement in, you know, civil engagement. I think ultimately, in order for us to be able to talk to each other and to engage with each other, we have to have civil engagement. You know, and I'll say another thing. Some people, they don't like that I come on this show. They say PvP people watch this show. Don't I have a duty to talk to PvP supporters as well?
I think that's the seminal mistake.
Since when do I not have a duty to talk to PvP supporters as well?
So
that's crazy.
But you don't have a,
well, don't let me say it's crazy, but that's.
but you don't have a duty. You have a mission to speak to the different demographics.
Listen, let me put
that should
every Guyanese. I owe every Guyanese the time of day. I owe that to them. So if you have a concern, even if you support PvP, that means your concerns are lesser or not.
no, but have
No,
you,
I still owe you.
have you ever been on this show and feel like you're constrained from making the point you want to make and the pitch to the people you want to pitch to? Have you ever felt that way?
I'm not saying that about the show. What I'm saying is some people will say that because this is
No,
the show.
I understand, but I'm asking you for your personal experience.
I mean, I think that's pretty reasonable to say this stuff.
Or we would, and in the future when we actually
so
come on,
why
you're free to say what you
do
want
you
to say.
also accept that we reach a different audience from what, for example, an Enrico Wolford would reach, and some of these other shows that the PNC people feel comfortable on? Do you agree that we reach a different?
Well, it seems to me that is the case partially because of the network is aired on, streamed on, stuff like that. So,
Right.
So I remember I use statistics, right? So statistically, it will skew towards a certain type of view, which is fine because they are people too, they're Guyanese too.
Right.
So why wouldn't I stick to my fellow Guyanese? It doesn't matter what your persuasion is.
The point say we got 2 more minutes. Your final thoughts on budget 2026. Let me get this clear before we go, because we have to put a description on your appearance here. Was it you, Elson Lowe, that coined the term that the budget is giving its name to?
I, along with another member of the NCR, find that term. Putting to the term.
And so we can say that you co-authored the term.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, maybe somebody independently co-authored it, it's possible. But
I think it's a sufficiently common term.
well, I mean, the
Putting
campaign
people
slogan for
first in politics.
But I think that name
It's a
was
sufficiently common term in
I mean,
politics.
yeah, but we
Um,
campaigning in this slogan all the time, and all of a sudden it appears. It's reasonable for people to say, You know, I mean, but they didn't see the slogan all the time, they would have seen it. So it's normal reaction for people to remark at how the budget could have the same slogan as
But it's a common slogan, you know.
the campaign.
Yeah, I think it's sufficiently common.
Man, you gotta put
Maybe
people
4
on.
years from now, it would
But
have
I
raised
understand
less
where
than
you're
an
going.
eyebrow.
You're
That's all
trying to say that the PPP copy a slogan, and I understand where you're going with that.
The problem is not the copy of the slogan. The problem is good policies and ideas, reform. Feel free to copy any of my work over all the years talking about reform and improving Guyana. But that's not what I copy. I copy the slogan, but not the policies.
I don't.
So it's like this is useless.
I don't know the history of many of the
just
terms
terrible.
used in Guyana, but putting people first sounds pretty rudimentary to me.
It's just
And,
sad. It's just sad.
So we gotta go. You want to end the show with the final thoughts on anything? Anything at all? Afghanistan, Denmark, Greenland, Trump, Guyana, Norton, KwaZulu-Natal, anything at all? Your personal life, anything at all?
So I would just say that looking at the next 5 years or next several years, we may see a lower oil price. I just want to tell viewers that I think this is more or less the type of budget that you should anticipate. You gotta kind of make your peace with that, so to speak. And if you want a different policy philosophy and approach, obviously you're gonna have to make different decisions in the future. And I think that once people internalize that, I think we're good to go.
Thanks for watching and listening to us. You were watching and listening to the former economic advisor to the parliamentary leader of the PNC, Aubrey Norton, former treasury of the PNC, and former central executive member of the PNC, Elson Lowe. He was giving his thoughts on the budgets, on the 2026 budget, and other subjects. Thanks for being with us. Take care. As I normally say, catch you later. Bye-bye.